In works of fiction, crime reporters usually are hard-bitten, hard-drinking, foul-mouthed, fairly aggressive males. My next guest is indeed a crime reporter, but as you will see, not the toughest nut in the world, although in the course of her work she has come to mix in very dodgy circles from time to time. Why does she do it? Why does she take the risks? Let's find out. Welcome, please, the Sunday Independent crime reporter, Veronica Guerin. It's good to see you looking so well.
Thank you very much.
Now, let's talk about the current story. The current story reads like something out of the Prohibition era in Chicago.
Yeah.
It's a fairly heavy story. Tell us what the basics of it are.
I suppose the basics are that a former League of Ireland footballer caught a youth of the criminal known as the Monk.
He was what, a nephew of his or something like that?
A nephew of his, yeah. Breaking all the windows in his car. And he came out, caught him, and beat the living daylights out of him. The guy was so severely beaten, he was hospitalised. He was in intensive care, and the family didn't take too well to it.
He was so badly beaten, they reckon they found some of his teeth in his stomach.
His teeth were in his stomach, his jaws were broken, he was in danger for some time of losing an eye. I should add that he got out of hospital last Thursday.
So he has survived this particular beating,
survived. And the Monk or his brother decided that a contract should be put out on the former League of Ireland footballer. So, unfortunately,
that is the situation.
That is it. Well, actually, there was a meeting last Wednesday night between representatives of both gangs, and the situation was resolved somewhat. Somewhat.
Yeah, because one of the papers, I've been looking at the headlines during the commercial break, and one of them says that external hitmen are being brought in. I mean...
Yeah, we'll be running a story tomorrow in the Sunday Independent. Sources close to... I've been speaking to sources close to both sides, and they say that the situation has been resolved. The Monk decided that it was a matter for the footballer and for the youth, and that no further action should be taken.
But money might change hands to sort out this little problem.
Well, actually, I have been told that the money will be paid to the footballer for compensation for damage that was done to his house as a result of a firebomb attack. Because
his house, in the wake of him beating up the nephew, his house was firebombed.
His house was firebombed twice, and also there were 2 microwaves, a television, camcorder, video, clothes, and 400 quid in cash were taken from the house.
This sounds, as I said, like Chicago in Prohibition time. I mean, it really is gone crazy.
It is, yeah.
You know about all of this. Other reporters too are writing about it. And this is all about what, drugs? Basically, these are...
No, well, that was...
but I mean, are they drug people? Are they involved in the sale of drugs?
League of Ireland footballer is allegedly, though he has denied it to me himself, that he's involved, that he's in any way related to the sale of drugs. Yeah. I wouldn't accept that. But yeah, he has accumulated massive profits.
But even the beating up of a nephew of any individual is against the law. That's assault. The firebombing of a house is clearly against the law. Yeah. To take a contract out on someone is clearly against the law. You know all this. A lot of people know all this. The public know all this. Clearly the guards know all this. So why can't they do something about it?
Well, maybe there hasn't been a complaint made to the guards in relation to this. The guards, of course, know what's going on, but when you're dealing with criminals, and particularly in relation to this situation, both sides would have a contempt for the guards and therefore would decide to resolve the matter themselves. So wouldn't encourage the guards to involve themselves.
Do you think the guards have sufficient powers to handle?
No, not at all.
Not at all?
Not at all. I mean,
do they feel their hands are tied and that they get odium from the public because...
Yeah, we're all critical of the guards. Myself, I get a lot of stick from the guards because occasionally I have to write critical stories about them. But I would have to say, it would be like Steve Collins trying to go in and fight Chris Eubank with one arm tied behind his back. Everything favours the criminal in this society.
What changes would you like to see?
I'd like to see changes made to the right to silence. I think if somebody can explain their actions or where they were the night of a particular crime, that they should do so. It shouldn't necessarily mean that they incriminate themselves. I think that we should change this whole question of bail laws. I think the bail laws are just absolutely ridiculous. A guy can get released on bail, commits further crimes, goes back, everything is lumped into one sentence, they all run concurrently. The revolving door system is just crazy. I think, though, if we're going to deal with the bail laws, that additional prisons are required, and I think that's an issue that the politicians are afraid to address, that we do need to build more prisons, because
and why do you think they're afraid of it? Because on the face of it, it would seem like a very popular issue for people to go big on. Are there minorities who would be, let's say, liberals, who really feel very strongly that the thin end of the wedge is taking rights away from people like the right to silence? I mean, suppose you are genuinely innocent. Why should you have to tell anyone where you were or what you do? You know, if you're innocent, why should you have to? You know.
Well, what do you lose by saying what where you were or what you were doing?
I'm just advocating the liberal argument that if you're wrongly arrested for something and you haven't done it, why should you have to explain yourself?
But if you are wrongly arrested, by explaining what you were doing, you can quite clearly, you can establish that you weren't there and that you're not guilty and you're not responsible. I think, you see, even if you're not going to reply to questions, I think if you're not going to answer any questions, that a judge should be allowed to take this into account when he's hearing a case.
Have your views hardened since you were attacked yourself?
Yes, probably. Yeah, I think they have.
Have you moved to the right of Attila the Hun or something like that?
I suppose after what happened to me, it brought home to me just how vulnerable people are, and that nothing can be done about it.
Yeah, you could have been killed. I mean, if the bullet had hit an artery, you could have died.
Yeah.
Although there is a view that someone was sent to frighten you, but I mean, they can mean to frighten you and kill you by accident just as easily when bullets are around.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to decide, I'm a crime reporter, this is what I do, I'm going to keep on doing it?
Well, I think my immediate reaction was that I'm a crime reporter and I'm going to keep on doing it, but I was probably high as a kite on drugs or on medication when I decided that. I went through a whole series of emotions. I mean, I did consider getting out of it, and then I just realised that would probably be more of a strain than staying in it, and it's my job, it's what I do, and somebody has to do it. I'm not the only crime reporter that does this, and I think that the regrettable thing is that we're all probably targets, unfortunately.
Why is that? Because people read about themselves, so what? I mean, people are not necessarily identified to the public at large. We hear about a Mr. Big or a Monk, but I mean, I don't know who these people are. I don't know who the former League of Ireland footballer is. I don't know any of these people,
Yeah, I think it's that we're publicising matters and bringing to the attention of the public generally a culture that exists in our society that nobody knows anything about. Now, if we publicise it and highlight it, politicians are forced to address these issues, because the most frightening thing is that crime is just the extent of the crime in Dublin City particularly is just alarming, and the inability of the guards, because of the legislation, to really do anything about it or to properly address it is something that has to be publicised. Now, when we do it, we're effectively bringing pressure onto the criminals, and either by guards or by legislation, and they just don't like it.
But there are a number of levels at which it has to be combated, and you mentioned yourself that if all the people are to be locked up for everything they do, you need more prisons, which means spending money, which means somebody's got to pay for it. You've got to get at judges if you want to do away with concurrent sentencing. You've got lots of things to do. There are so many. Where would you begin? Would it be the bail laws? Would it be?
I think it has to be sort of an overall review of the complete judicial system. I think that, and you have to start educating and providing alternatives to crime in city centres. I think that we can't ignore that either, that most people are born into a society where nothing else is available to them except crime, so that it has to be addressed at that level. But I personally, because I address and see so often the crime lords, I really think, and it has been decided this week, that extra resources will be put to seeing exactly what these guys are up to and trying to deter it.
Know the person you reckon who ordered the hit on you?
I don't really.
You don't know who did it?
No,
Do you suspect?
Yeah, but it's not the person that I or the guards. I don't believe it's the person that either the guards or I believed in the immediate
At the time,
aftermath.
this was the so-called Mr. Big?
Exactly.
And it's not Mr. Big?
I don't think so, no.
Somebody else?
Yeah.
And do you suspect that you know who it is?
I do, yeah.
If you met that person? Because you might. I mean, you frequently
course,
venture into the so-called underworld.
And the chances are that I have.
And what would you say to him if you met him, like, tomorrow?
I'd continue as normal. I wouldn't address it.
Just do your job.
Yeah.
Ask the questions.
Yeah.
Has your lifestyle changed dramatically since the shooting?
I'm more appreciative of what I've got, and
What are you, more careful, more protected?
well, Sunday Independent very kindly installed a top-class security system at my home, so I feel better there. I am more. I'd like to think that I am sort of more conscious of things that may occur, but yeah, I am.
All right.
Very definitely.
Veronica, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks.
Looking great. Looking terrific.